Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to remind you each and every day, it expands our base. This is not an easy podcast for me to deliver to you today. One of my favorite books in my library is called Chief of Staff, 25 Years of Managing the Presidency. It's interviews with people who served as White House Chief of Staff, and it's firsthand interviews. And it's published, this book, by the way, by the University of California Press. It's brilliantly done, and it goes all the way back to the Eisenhower administration and comes all the way up to recent administrations. Why do I indicate that this is a book that ought to be looked at and read? Because of General John Kelly, Donald Trump's longest-serving chief of staff, who has, in a fascinating interview for the New York Times, revealed his insights into Donald Trump. He compares Donald Trump to a fascist. He talks about Donald Trump's admiration for Hitler. He talks about the fact that Donald Trump said he wished that his generals were like Hitler's generals. I listened to some of it because it's been broadcast, and I was absolutely horrified that we had in the White House a president of the United States who, working with his chief of staff on a daily basis, would reveal himself in such stark reality. Let's be clear. John Kelly is not the first former advisor to Donald Trump who has turned his back on his former boss. Former Vice President Mike Pence has said he would never vote for Donald Trump. John Bolton, former National Security Advisor to the President, has said he would never vote for Donald Trump. General Mark Milley has said very clearly, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, appointed by Donald Trump, that he will not vote for Donald Trump. And if you believe the accounts by Bob Woodward, the word fascist was also used in his description of Donald Trump. Mike Esper, former Secretary of Defense, says he will never vote for Donald Trump. And you can go down the list of people who work for Donald Trump who absolutely say they will not vote for him. Now, I've been very careful in the process of analyzing Donald Trump to stick to issues, because, frankly, I disagree with Donald Trump on a whole host of issues. But when you have the people who worked with him, people he appointed, think of the television show The Apprentice. Can you imagine Donald Trump fame came in part from being a television personality talking about people he would hire and fire? What is very concerning to me, however, is something else. I have been listening avidly for Republicans to speak out. Members of the Senate, members of the House, leading Republican figures. And what you hear is either a deafening silence or a defense of Donald Trump. One Republican senator who I heard this morning said, I didn't have any direct contact with John Kelly, but I never heard Donald Trump express these kind of sentiments. Ladies and gentlemen, if it quacks like a duck, waddles like a duck, looks like a duck, it's a duck. And the Republican Party cannot duck this issue. Let there be no doubt about it. There is a reason why so many Americans are afraid of the prospect of Donald Trump having a second term. I spoke the other day about Donald Trump and his view of the Alien and Sedition Act. That act passed when John Adams was president of the United States. And I have to tell you that this is something that, we ought to really be thinking about, considering it. The Alien and Sedition Act actually was created because there was a feeling that we would be going to war with France. And Donald Trump has defended the idea of the Alien and Sedition Act, which John Adams defended, supported, believed in. This is a very disturbing moment in history. We will, in less than 2 weeks, go to the polls, and we will vote for either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. More than 200 Republicans have stated their concern about the possibility of a Donald Trump presidency. And now General Kelly, whose integrity, whose ability, whose loyalty is unquestioned. And yet, what you will hear now are people trying to discredit John Kelly. Not because John Kelly did anything wrong, but because he told the truth about Donald Trump. Isn't it astounding? Isn't it remarkable that members of the Republican Party who put such faith in John Kelly and who were thrilled when Donald Trump made him White House Chief of Staff now are turning on John Kelly in order to try to defend Donald Trump? This is a critical moment with less than 2 weeks to go before the election. Millions of votes have already been cast. And I must tell you, I am concerned about my country. This is something that needs to be considered with great care. And John Kelly's interview should be heard everywhere. I want to be generally clear about something else. There is the accusation being made that Donald Trump spoke disparagingly of Mexican Americans. The same day when he was speaking to a Hispanic group, the word came out that he referred to one soldier who perished, she died, that she was let's clean it up, a forking Mexican. Is there nothing beyond this man who makes these kinds of statements? And again, that's attributed to John Kelly. I'm not even going to get into the question of Rudy Giuliani, who's been convicted and stripped of all of his wealth and power because he defended an election lie. But I want you all to think about something. It's not the fact that Rudy Giuliani acted as a lawyer. It is the fact that Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, accepted the thesis that the last election was fraudulent. That's why Rudy Giuliani is in such trouble. And the attack on 2 women, a mother and daughter, well, it's inexcusable. This is what we face on Election Day, a clear choice between 2 directions for the United States of America. I will, tonight, as many of you will, sit and listen to Kamala Harris, who will appear on a CNN forum. Donald Trump will not be there because he's refused to debate her. But I will be intrigued, fascinated by what, in fact, Kamala Harris has to say about the events of the last few days. This is not an easy podcast for me. I prefer to argue about issues, but it is now clear that Donald Trump is so compromised, and frankly, no sense of history, that Donald Trump being president of the United States would be a disaster. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague. And of course, you can interact with me on LinkedIn and on Facebook. And I want to say a special word of thanks to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast. By the way, Donald Trump's judgment about who he hires, well, pretty bad, I'd say. But in the case of Gogo Zoger, I'd hire you again, Gogo. The ultimate compliment. I am John Rothman. This is Around the Political World with John Rothman, and I will see you tomorrow.